Oh, yeah. I did with Adelante at least 5 years and a year or so as the chair.
Okay, so Adelante is an organization in Honduras, Central America, that does facilitates microloans to women in rural areas. And those small loans uh, usually get turned into small businesses. And these women are able to advance their families. And the idea is that when you loan these women money, they have a better chance of advancing their families than guys, because it's been proven that before, when you've given guys a lot of money, they don't take it really to their families in general, and they usually spend it in other things such as drinking. Okay, and I'm being very, very general here,
Right.
but that was the objective of that organization.
Correct.
So welcome again, Robert. And he said that he would, I explained to him the things that we were seeing in class. He is not, he is going to adapt his talk to the things that we're seeing in class. But at the same time, he might require some feedback from the class, just so that he might be able to suit your needs as well. Okay? So, Robert, I mean, I think it was a fair introduction, even though you've done more, much more. So take it away, Robert, and thank you for being in our freshman year seminar, Global Studies 101.
Hello, University of Illinois Springfield freshman class. Welcome to your next chapter and amazing journey in your life with a great university. And I look forward to, over time, seeing, learning, and hearing what you're going to do, the things you're going to do, not only for your family, for your community, but for our country. So we have high hopes in you.
Not what the country can do for you, huh?
You know what? Safe country is the first step of doing for us, right? Also, before I get started, today is the 11th of November, which is Veterans Day. If you didn't know, it actually started after World War I to honor the fallen and those who served in World War I. And then after World War II, they changed the name to Veterans Day to capture all the different veterans of foreign wars and other things that we had to deal with to defend democracy, liberty, and freedom abroad and also here. So just wanted to give honor to our veterans. A number of us have family members or have, some have even personally served, probably out in your group there, but or will serve. And also keep in mind, serving the country also is our parents who didn't actually serve in the military or other things, but by being good citizens and raising good people, help us build a strong country. And to me, they're patriotic, and they help make the American dream better for all of us. So here's what I'd like to do first is I'm going to give a quick, little bit more detail about my career path, coming from a geography and economics background. And then I'm going to ask you a question before I go into the next wave. But I want you to think of, maybe if the group could come up with maybe 3 things that would be of value to you, that when we end this discussion, it was answered in the discussion, okay? So I want you to think of 3 things. What would be the 3 things you want, whether it's career-wise or just questions about the world, or you name it. So I'm going to do a quick additional bio. I'm originally from upstate New York, Albany.
Albany.
Albany, New York, absolutely.
No, Albany.
Albany, yeah, that's the old New Yorker coming out. But and we migrated to the Midwest. My mother is originally from Arkansas, and she migrated up to New York with some family members, met my dad, they fell in love. But then she said once they started having children, she's like, I like the South, I like the Midwest values, I want to move back. and she persuaded the family to move to the Midwest, which turned out to be the best thing because we ended up being raised in Missouri. So you will find that one of the biggest challenges I have is, and I don't know if you all in Springfield have this challenge, but I was raised in St. Louis, so I have the semi-cardinal issue, but I did a long career in Chicago, so I have a Cub issue.
So just so that you know, there is a lot of that going on here. There is, the Cubs people, and there is the Cardinals people. That is a debate that happens all the time among sports fans. Yes.
That's what I thought. And since you mentioned that I was at Kraft Foods, you can see right there, we used to highly support the Cubbies because I was based out of Chicago. But so anyway, of course, you can see I love baseball. I actually like sports. I actually tend to watch sports with the sound off, if that makes any sense. I like the game of football, but I don't need to hear the commentators. I like baseball as I used to watch it with my grandparents at their feet, but I prefer to watch it with the sound off because I just like to watch the players without all the commentary. But anyway, so I graduated from a school in the Midwest, a state over from you all, Indiana University, Bloomington, and I studied economics and I studied geography. Okay. And at the time, it was unusual to have an economics and geography degree. And also at the time, a number of people were like, what do you do with geography? And but I kind of understood that if I had foundational things with certain majors, there's certain fields that I could go into regardless. The one thing about geography that helps you out on is, especially as you get deeper into it, is take the statistics and some of the other things but look, if you're going to do supply chain logistics, geography helps you think of some of the things that people who only look at spreadsheets don't even think of, because we take into account the topography of the landscape. We take into account the weather, all the things that can impact supply chain and logistics. It becomes a natural thought process for us than versus somebody who has only taken the linear side of just business on just looking at the financials. There's also the human side, on the cultural side. I focused on migration. I was always interested in the history of migration. Why do people move? What forces them to move? Was it a choice? Was it them addressing risk? Things like that. But I also focused a lot on the statistics. I had about 12 hours worth of statistics when I was in school, in college, and I had, of that 12, one was a graduate course on statistics and econometrics. To understand history, to understand geography, to understand psychology, to understand anything without the math behind it, the statistics, it's empty. Because everything requires budgeting, everything requires proving a point. And by taking those stats classes, understanding the charts, the Venn diagrams, how to use them, finite mathematics, it helps you prove a point, whether you're writing policy, whether you're trying to submit a report for a grant, whether you're trying to secure funding for a budget, you name it. And I would say,
Robert, just
yes.
so that you know,
Yes.
Fortunately, everybody that wants to graduate here from UIS has to take a statistics class.
That is awesome, because when I went to school, that wasn't the case. That's great. I love that.
Yeah, it is fantastic. Yep.
That's huge. So regardless of the field you deal with, you'll always deal in numbers. Everybody says they don't want to deal with numbers, but you're always going to look at numbers. Even if you're doing your own investments or personal finance, you will always deal with some sort of numbers. So career-wise, I graduated. I studied economics and geography. I was recruited by Procter & Gamble because they liked my mix of majors, because I was not totally non-tradition, not in the school of business, and they wanted somebody different with a different background. But the thing that also helped me the most, and I asked that you consider this while you're doing it, I worked while I was in school, worked year-round, multiple jobs. Even though I was out of state, I still worked on campus. I knew how many hours I had to work at home also, or not on campus, but while in school. But the other thing that they took notice to was the student organizations that I was involved in. the student organizations that I was involved in. I would recommend that, though you may not think much of it now, even if you don't have to always lead. I call myself a strong follower. Be involved. The first thing that I got involved with was my dorm room, my dorm floor. Every dorm has its own committee and everything like that. And I was on the social committee. So I was on the social committee for the dorm. And, I helped coordinate our social movie nights, things like that, and discussions about movies. But that allowed me to work on my presentation skills, which I didn't think about, organization skills, which I didn't think about because I was just doing at the time, budgeting, which you don't think about when you're just doing it. But as you go along and you reflect back on those things, each one of the things that you do today, when you go to interview in your junior year or senior year for a job, or even before that when you go to do an internship, those experiences give you the foundation to interview for an internship or for a job. And each one of those things matter. I was on a student alumni council. I was, eventually I joined a fraternity, but also I did fencing. While you're at college, in college, try a number of things that you would never dream of. I literally said I was going to be the chocolate Zorro, for those of you who don't know. He was an old-fashioned sword fighter. But while you're in school, get as much exposure to different things. That sounds funny, but eventually when I got into my career, my experience in fencing, all the other coordination things and these campus organization activities, the budgeting, everything like that, guess what? It gave me a reservoir of small talk topics to have not only in the interview, but when I was doing contract negotiations with multi-billion-dollar clients later on in my career. It gave me a point of difference when I was 23 years old in southern Indiana and Kentucky, who understood all this stuff. And because of my love of geography and history, there were people who were major decision makers in major companies that took a liking to me because of my interest in geography. Now, why did that matter? At the time when I came up, I'm now 56, retired 6 years ago, a number of the people I worked with had served in the either World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, or they had been the first group that had served in Peace Corps. Well, because I had my love for geography, and you can see my love for books, I had conversations with them as a 23-year-old that they were used to somebody 2 times my age having, because when we would talk and I'd be in their office, I'd start talking about the topography of Korea. I hadn't been to Korea, but in my mind I had traveled because I've traveled through my books. I was able to talk about Otto von Bismarck or you name it, and to these people, they took a liking to me, whereas my competition always talked about sports, even though I love sports. I talked about geography and history to these people, and to them what happened is my competitors got jealous because my clients started saying, well, we're taking Robert out to lunch. Now, usually your client doesn't take somebody who's working with them out to lunch. You usually take them out. And they were inviting me to things because they were having a different type of exchange and conversation because of my foundation of geography, history, and stats. Yes?
Robert, I can only imagine you going into the office and do a quick scanning of their paraphernalia, their pictures, or little flags that they would have up in a canister, and you can say, look at that. I like your hat, Honduras. Oh, what do you think of Tegucigalpa? Did you like it? Have you been there? And you start a conversation that is way more meaningful. They probably have done some military service over there, and you know a whole lot about it, or at least something that's gonna click.
And so I share this with you because in the business school, they talk a lot about it. We don't always get it in non-business school courses, but what you do does matter, but what you're aware of and your curiosity about it matters even more. So I say life is about chance, curiosity, choice, concentration, competition, and compassion. And so your curiosity requires a choice. So once you pique your curiosity on what's around you. The question is, you have a choice, or you're going to ask about it. And most people like to talk about themselves. So I got to know a lot of different people through, like you said, you scan the office or you scan what they're wearing. We each we each are determining who we are, you know. So there's a lot, if you look behind me, that would tell you who I am, whether it is the books, whether it is the statues, whether it is, this is my fraternity brick. So it tells you I was in a fraternity, awards from the company. And if you look higher, the gifts that I've gotten from China and other countries, places like that. So that would just tell you about somebody. So it gives you something to talk about, regardless of what business you're in, whether you become an accountant, a lawyer, or a teacher. Everybody's going to want to have conversation, and you just use what's around you to drive the conversation. So I'm going to stop here before I go into more of the international stuff. What are the 3 things you all would like to know, so that when you leave this discussion, you feel like it was worth it to you? Because I want to meet your expectations.
I have a question.
Yes. And I'm going to take the questions down, and then I'll answer them all. Okay?
Okay. I would like to know a little bit more about your progression at Kraft.
Okay.
And how your career progressed while you were in there.
Okay. Anyone else?
Anybody has a question for Robert as far as his life goes?
Or even your life?
Manny.
Where do you work at and what do you do for your job?
Okay.
Okay, where do you work at right now and what do you do for your job?
Okay.
Okay. And another volunteer? Yes. What? Sorry. Let me get her question. Okay, of course. And then, of course, Jasmine wants some advice for youngsters like them in their future.
Got it. All right. Progress of craft, what work do I do, and youngsters can do to advance themselves. Spot on. So some of those, first let me get to the craft thing. So
How long were you there to begin with?
I had 2 years at Procter and Gamble, and then I was recruited by Kraft Foods, and I had 25 years with Kraft Foods, 14 assignments, and about 5 times in corporate headquarters. And I retired at 50 years old 6 years ago as one of our vice presidents. So, key things as you look to progress, it is awareness and curiosity. And that's why we're talking about what's going on around you that you can use in your discussion. But it's the quantitative side. One of the things that was a point of difference for me versus my competition was I love stats. And I understood it. So I was not fascinated by the pretty chart. I wanted to understand the key parameters around anything that was being shared. We call it key performance indicators. And you always want to know what time frame you're talking about, what measures are they using, and what are the questions that they ask before they put together all the data. And the other thing that I was very particular about, and it may sound kind of rigid, but if we agree on 5 key performance indicators, let's just say 3: speed, distance, time, theoretically. Speed, distance, time. And we say we're going to meet on speed, distance, time for the next 6 months. Those are going to be the topics. In that 6 months, I don't want somebody all of a sudden say, hey, well, I know we said we're going to talk about speed, distance, time. Let's talk about shape. Because they don't like the numbers of speed, distance, and time. And so the thing is, whatever criteria that you open with, it's very important, regardless of what level you're at, to hold the team accountable to that criteria. You can still be nimble, But I got a point of difference because even when senior leadership wanted to go off criteria, I used to pull them back in, and that got me a point of difference. But anyway, I retired as a vice president. My clients and my teams, I had national teams. My last team worked with Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid. I've had, negotiations worked with Walmart, Costco, Dollar General, Family Dollar when nobody wanted to work with them, and they got even bigger market cap than Kroger today. So a lot of different clients out there that we supplied. And if you look at the brands, real quick, the brands that I've worked with my whole career, from Procter and Gamble, from Downy to Ivory Soap to you name it, to Top Job, Mr. Clean, to Kraft, where it's people don't know we own Crystal Light, we own Kool-Aid, we own Capri Sun. We used to own Nabisco until we spun that off to Mondelez, and we own Cadbury chocolate. So there's a lot of different things. Food is interesting because there's a science to it, and there's supply chain logistics, operations, finance, and it's very exciting, and all of you can be a part of that.
It's a big food industry, that's for sure.
Huge. Food, consumer products. Okay, so the next question was, where do I work? So if you look,
That's a good question.
that is a good question. That's a very good question. Now we're going to go international and some domestic. So if my website is called acommononeconnectivity.com. That's connectivity.com.
Okay, and they have that already up in Canvas, so they can access that site.
Okay, good. So what do I do? That is a very interesting question. So I do a couple of very important things because when I was your age, I started planning, even though I knew things would change, because I knew at 50 I wanted to do whatever I wanted to do. Okay, again, at your age, I started planning and being involved in a lot of things, but I let the things carry me like a current. But I knew that once I got about 50, I wanted to do whatever I wanted to do. Now, why did I want to do that? My dad he worked for a major utility company in Missouri, but we always had a construction company on the side. Me and my brothers was like his free labor. But he said, look, I mean, you're not really free labor, but So anyway,
You was smart dad.
yeah, well, I'll tell you the story when I tried to have a strike on my father and they left me at the construction site by myself. But literally, and I walked 10 miles home because he was like, hey, if you want to strike, go on, walk home, and everybody left me. But anyway, and you learn a lesson at 10 years old pretty quick. But the thing is, my dad died at 59 years old because he didn't know how to stop. He didn't need the money. We weren't rich. I mean, it wasn't about being rich. He just didn't know how to stop. And so what I said to myself was, I love my father, love my mom, but I'm not going to be my dad. Very easygoing. Both of my parents were pretty easygoing, nice, old-fashioned Christian, conservative type of people. But he was a workaholic. He just couldn't be still. And so I said, I'm going to lay out a plan so that when I get to the point where I want to walk away, it's like today you guys are talking, or today they're talking about the Great Resignation, where people are like retiring or quitting or just frustrated. I never wanted to leave anything upset or frustrated. I always leave everything and make a transition with a plan. And so I laid out a plan to be able to walk when I turned 50. I left a lot of money on the table. I mean, when you're 50 years old and you're a vice president, you're at a prime time in your career.
And you were on top of the game then.
On top of the game.
Yeah, so how do you decide to retire right then and there?
On top, and let's put it this way, when you think of on top of the game, everybody, think about what a multi-billion-dollar corporation vice president makes. I won't tell you. And picture that's what I walked away from in salary and stock options. And that's 6 years. So if I could have done that another 6 years, think of what all I could have made. But what I opted to do, parallel to my corporate career, and this will lead into telling you what I do now. I always had a not-for-profit side that I always was involved in. Ever since I was 23, once I graduated from school, I was involved with my university. And I hope you, if you want to help, if you want to do well, be involved with your alumni association where you're done also, because that's your greatest network that you could ever have, and help your school out and help the next students also. I'd say that there's one thing that most people mess up on that is young, is you wait too late to reconnect with your former faculty members. You wait too late to connect and reach back to your university. You wait too late to connect to your alumni, and most people wait until they need something. I have never waited until I need something. If you just make certain things a part of your life, do it. I used to give my university $10 a year or a couple bucks a year, because you know why that mattered? That got me registered in the IU Foundation, right? But it also got me in the habit of giving. But if you can't give money, you give time. And I would show up to classes and encourage other young students to stick it out. So I became, I was on one of the advisory boards for the Alumni Association for the College of Arts and Sciences. And along the way, I got pulled into a lot of different things. Patrick talked about Honduras with Adelante Foundation. We did microlending educational services, training anywhere from 6,000 to 7,000 families. 95% of them are women. If you want to build a family, invest in women. If you want to strengthen an enclave or village, invest in women. If you want to see the children do better, invest in women. If you
want to improve education,
invest in women. It's just the way it is. You don't need a lot of studies to do that. But anyway, so what we did is beyond the lending, the key thing that made Adelante different, and just so you know, Adelante was created over 20 years ago after a major hurricane, Mitch, came through and devastated a good portion of Honduras. And they saw what the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and all these big donors were doing. All the money that was going in for the rich people, and the rich people were benefiting. And then an angel donor and a founder who with them came up with an idea of help the poorest of the poor, not by giving them something, but by teaching them how to create their own business so that they can be independent and not perpetually always in debt. And that's what this program has done. And it's actually worked with over 70,000 families since, excuse me. And a number of them have gotten on their feet and done quite well. And they pick their own businesses. But beyond the loaning, what is important, in which I got Procter & Gamble, because I'm part of Procter & Gamble's Alumni Association, to match a donation where we provide train-the-trainer services to inspire the Adelante staff, which are phenomenal Hondurans. They're amazing Hondurans, to help them improve their training of the women, because it's as much about training someone how to operate a business as it is giving them the funding for the business. The problem with the U.S., with the SBA, the Small Business Association, you file, you do all the paperwork, they give you the money. But the thing is, a lot of people, even if they can qualify for the money they have for their small business loan, is if you don't understand the basic finances of profit, loss. The other thing is, people don't know how to set pricing. What should my price be? What about my competition? We also went through safety, security. What happens if you're in a flooded area? What happens, how do you do a fire? So, and we did this as a community, because their communities help make the decision. But think about if you had an organization in the U.S. that had what I would call a wraparound like that actually not just gave the money, but actually you had groups that actually could talk about their business and what they're dealing with as a family in their different locations. And that helps them with confidence, sustaining things, and it does a lot of different things. Do you still have me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. So, yeah, it's the training part is absolutely it's crucial. It's very important, because otherwise you're just giving money to the client, I guess, in a way.
So back to what you said, what am I doing? So I gave you a for-profit, not-for-profit. I've served, again, none of these things I'm mentioning I ever asked for, but that's why I say if you're doing, people will draw you into it. I was drawn into Adelante in Honduras. I also served I also support and have served the Smithsonian for over a decade, and I finished last year as the vice chair for the Asian Pacific American Center. It's one of the youngest departments at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. I was a part of their charter group when the council or the advisory board was created. And then Irene Inoua, who passed last year, asked me to be her vice chair a couple years ago. And so she and I did it also. Irene Inoua was, her husband is the late U.S. Senator from Hawaii, Inoua, who served in World War II, nobly served in World War II. So when you're doing, my key point to you is when you're doing something and you're aware of what you're doing while you're doing it, you will be tapped on the shoulder. Every time I've been doing things, I've been tapped on the shoulder. And so also I just rotated off being the chair. I was vice chair and the chair for the state of Indiana for all Indiana University campuses worldwide, representing 750,000 alumni worldwide. We had about 65, 70 employees, and we raised a lot of money. We just completed we ended up raising $3.8 billion for IU, and then and we had about 350,000 alumni donate. And then with the Smithsonian, I served on their steering committee. It was their largest campaign steering committee. We targeted raising $1.5 billion. We ended up raising $1.88 billion. I don't take credit for raising any of these things. All I take credit for is they let me in the room and sit at the table during the 3 years. But anyway, for some reason they wanted I call myself like the chocolate Forrest Gump around, maybe, a little chocolate Lucky Charm. But anyway, so you ask, what do I do now? What do I do now is what I was doing while I worked at Kraft. The only difference is I'm not having to go into Kraft and doing it. I was recently invited a number of years ago to Mafalong, which is a foundation that was created in Thailand. And when you get a chance, look up the Golden Triangle. It has a long history with British and everything and all that illicit stuff that was going on, a very dangerous area, especially during the Vietnam War, but well before that. And about 40 years ago, in Thailand, they have a royal family. And one of the mothers of one of the major royals, she was in her 70s or 80s, did something that I have never seen done in any other country. But if you ever want to fix a problem area, this is what you do. She told her family, and she told everybody, she was moving. And guess where she moved to? She moved to the most dangerous place in their country. Flew in by helicopter. It's just a mountainous area in Thailand. Flew in by helicopter, picked a large plateau that had a great view of the valley, and said, I want to build my royal compound here. Guess what? There were no roads in there, no airport in there. The police had a history of corruption. The military had a history of corruption. You had cross-border incursions. You had undocumented people going back and forth. You had the military and the police abusing the undocumented people. Need I go further? And it was dangerous. And at night, you're talking battles and everything like that, especially as you're fighting the drug traffic, everything like that. The mother of a major royal said, I want to live here. It's just like the president of the United States mother, any president we've had, mother saying, I want to live in the roughest, most dangerous place in the U.S. And she did it. And her number 2 guy became my mentor a number of years ago. And his name, we call him Kunchai, his name Disnata Disco. He just passed 2 weeks ago. But what they did without any Western support whatsoever, no Western support, no Western money, no Western nothing. And they've been awarded for what they've done. 26 out of the 29 villages became drug-free. The area had become deforested. And what happened is when they went in and she went in there, the government and the people knew they had to clean things up. But as they went in, they engaged the people. They didn't beat them up, right? And they didn't pressure them. And they went around and they started talking about water. They started talking about, they got the elders, and the elders started talking about how the temperature used to be a little bit cooler. They talked about their benefits if they had safety. And so as people bought into the safety thing, they said, we're going to focus on education, health, jobs, and safety. So they started teaching them the basic skills. They didn't leap forward in all this advanced technology. They taught everybody how to make old-fashioned bricks.
Yeah.
You know, so they started building and engaging, gave them, and then the people who were undocumented, they didn't give them citizenship, but they gave them a place to stay as long as they paid and were legal. And so they started stripping away the places that caused corruption for a long time. Through this program, they've been recognized by the United Nations. They've been recognized by the U.S. DEA. They've been recognized by Interpol. And this is all funded by the royal family, all coordinated and managed by locals. It's not the UN. It's not Peace Corps coming in and telling, no outsiders telling the Thais how to do it. So that's what they've done. And I've been connected to them probably about over a half decade now, a little over a half decade. And then the gentleman who just passed, who's like my mentor, he made sure the last time I visited, they were doing negotiations on the Myanmar-Thai border because they were doing a cross-border economic development. Now keep in mind, I'm not a part of any government. But keep in mind, that's why I say if you're doing and you're highly active and you're well-read, consistently well-read, and this is only some of the books I read, there's things you'll be pulled into that you're valued because of how well-read you are, okay, versus somebody who may be in the government and has to say their words in a measured manner. I don't have to say my words in a measured manner. So there I was, a commoner, surrounded by royals, surrounded by Thai government officials, surrounded by Myanmar government officials, and he wanted me, before I headed out, he said, no, Johnson, I want you here to meet with these people. They need to see you, and I want you here.
Excellent.
So all I say is, there's nothing, I don't come from royalty, but all I say, the benefit about you growing up in this wonderful country is as long as we take advantage of it, and I'm talking about the curiosity of reading, learning, everything, you focus on that, the upside is yours, but you have to be active. And when you're active and you're doing, and that doesn't mean you don't meditate, it's good to meditate, but active doing and being present, you will be amazed the things that you'll be invited to. Function like water. Follow the contours of the land. Function like wind. You'll end up in places you never expected or never thought you would ever have been.
So you're telling us, Robert, that as we serve, when we serve for others without expecting much in return and with all good intentions, many paths will open before you.
Yes, and to give the final answer to what he said, what do I do? Right now, I invest in people. I and my syndicate, I give money, I give time, but I only do it to people who I've known for a while and who are making an impact. So, yes, I'm not out fundraising, like you'll see my site, I'm not soliciting anybody, you know what I mean? Whether you're a politician, whether you're somebody, if I feel like you're good for the country or you're good for your own country, I'll connect you with my resources and I give you my money. I'm not the only person doing that. But if you go on LinkedIn, one of the things the Smithsonian's doing with myself is they have a program called Tech Teach that they started. Every year, the Smithsonian's, their folklore and culture department, does an annual event around July 4th on culture of some sort. But they usually, when you're doing these things, you always have stage set up, you have sound, audio, things like that, and carpentry. Well, 2 years ago, they started testing a program to take local students in the main DC, Virginia area to train them on being, to help build stages, sound, and things like that. But they give them an intensive training so that when they're done, they can go into a journeyman or apprenticeship and things like that. So what I did is, because I know they're still testing it, they're right now, I put up $25,000 of my own money, and I sent it out to my syndicate to be matched to fully fund about, I think it's about 20 students, to give them a 12-week program, 12 to 15-week program to train them on how to be a carpenter, how to do electronics, all around the entertainment, because I'm more into the entertainment support, not the people on the stages, but the people who help build the stages, who build the sound. And so those are the students that I'm supporting in the DC area. So that's an example. Another thing is I have endowed scholarships. I think Americans are horrible in geography, not only domestically, internationally.
I agree.
Says one geographer to another. So I have, if you look at online, I have the Robert N. Johnson Scholarship. It's with my university, but it is targeted. I specifically have it targeted for people who come from rural or urban locations. Rural or urban locations. And that is where my scholarship at my school is targeted for, and it's approaching about 9 or 10 years of handing it out. And actually, I think 75% of the scholarships, if not 80, have gone to women who are studying global information systems, GIS, and stuff like that. Some have done environmental. Some have, one young lady back in 18 or 19 utilized it to do her research abroad, and so it helped fund her research abroad. And then I also have an economic encouragement scholarship. Most scholarships either go to the extremely wealthy or the extremely poor, or excuse me, not the extremely wealthy, the extremely A student or the extremely poor student. And my economic encouragement scholarship doesn't care what wealth you come from. It's based on if you started below a 3.0 early in your time at school, but you're able to get above a 3.0 by your junior year, you now qualify to be in the running for my economic encouragement scholarship. There's nothing in our schools for those of us who are in the middle. There's no carrot out there often for those of us in the middle to try and do better. And so I created that economic encouragement scholarship to give the carrot for those of us who need that encouragement to do better. And in that situation, it's allowed a number of students to graduate who were in the middle, debt-free.
Interesting.
So you ask what I do, I invest in our people, I invest in our country, and guess what? I'm not a politician running for office. So I retired at 50 to be able to go where I want, do what I want, pick up the phone for who I want, and say what I want.
All right. For all that independence. That's worth $1 billion there. All of your independence.
So I hope that helps, and I hope I answered the last question about what students to do, but really I think the biggest thing for you today that you could do is a lot of people are really good test takers. I never was the best test taker, but guess what? Everything that I knew stuck with me forever. Everything I knew stuck with me forever. Even after I took certain classes, I reread a good portion of the book that next summer. And by building on it, it allowed me to have a reservoir of things to draw upon when I had to talk to directors, VPs, wealthy donors, or politicians, or faculty member. That's number one. So don't get down if your grade isn't perfect. Just master what you know. You can always gain from building off of that. Just master what you know and build off of it. So don't get down. Number two, be active on campus. Help somebody. It doesn't have to be political. It could be a language. It could be a language club. And bilingual is huge. Trilingual is a trifecta that you will be able to write your own ticket. I would tell you, you do not have to be perfect. Okay? I don't try and practice any of the languages that I'm familiar with. Notice I say familiar with. I don't practice them with Americans in the US, but I practice them when I'm in country. When I'm in Brazil and I'm in Portugal, I practice my Portuguese. When I'm in a Spanish country, I turn off my English and I only try and speak Spanish. When I'm in Eastern Europe, they don't like it as much anymore, but like when I'm in Bulgaria or Poland, the older people, I'll speak a little Russian too. The younger ones, they don't know it, you know. Mandarin, I know very little, but I try and know enough of a lot of different languages to be able to operate and listen. And I'll tell you, in New York, it really freaks out Russian cab drivers when they're speaking in Russian and you go, kakoga, как дела? Or, you know, you just start throwing out a couple of things and you go, what? They're like, what? Udacha, you know, and they're like, oh my God, you listened, you heard what I was saying. I go, yes, I did. I heard you say chorny. Chorny is black. I said, what you talking about the black guy for? I heard that. But it's fun. Have fun in languages. Be involved on campus. The other thing is the person to the left or right of you, you should look at. You never know the person in your room or the person next to you in your class, what they will do and what they can be, or what you could be together. I have friendships going back from college that I cherish. And when you get my age, you could say, I don't need any new friendships because I got these other ones. And they have ranged from being a great homemaker to being extremely wealthy, to writing books, to doing overseas assignments, to helping a lot of people, to working in the White House, to you name it, okay? But there's a lot of really good Americans out there. I know a lot of people who get attention, and this is why I like Midwest values. Not everybody's going to be a billionaire, but you can be if you practice right and who you spend your time with, you can be a millionaire. Not everybody's going to be a billionaire, but you can be a billionaire. You can be a millionaire. You just have to make sure that you never spend more than what you have. Never spend more than what you have. Be very careful, as my grandmother says, do what you want, but make sure you can pay for it. Do what you want, but make sure you can pay for it. My grandmother used to say, look, don't make your dreams my nightmare. Let me repeat that one more time. Grandma said, you can do what you want, but don't make your dreams my nightmare. Okay? So one thing I say to students all the time, when you're deciding what you want to do for your life, know that it will change over time. But note that decide how you want to live. Where do you want to live? What kind of life you want to live? Things like that. Because if you want to live a more flamboyant life, but yet you choose a career that can't pay for that flamboyance, you will be a burden, potentially, on the family until you crack the code. And some of us never, ever wanted to be a burden for a family.
That is open to lots of interpretation. Don't make your dreams my nightmare, huh?
You can have any dream you want, as long as you don't ask me to pay for it.
Exactly. Don't step over anybody as well.
Well, now you get to another one. The other one that I look, we used to drive, I don't know if you guys did it, but St. Louis, it was great. We lived in Webster Groves, Rock Hill area. And around the holidays, we would get in our old Impala. You know, Dad would never go, but Mom and Pa, all six of us, well, 5 of us at the time in Impala. And we go driving into the neighborhoods with the big houses with all the lights up. We put our little lights up, but some of these people were really creative, right? And we'd go, oh, that's so beautiful, that's so great, and we'd celebrate. We're like, oh, that's so cool. And then we'd look at the houses. Oh, we like the structure. But here's what I'm blessed that I was raised in this type of family, and we've done the same thing with our daughter, is we learned to celebrate other celebration. So I celebrate your celebration. So we were taught not to have envy. You can be a billionaire and I'll still celebrate. You can be a millionaire, I can still celebrate. You could be a happy teacher, salesman, I'll still celebrate you. I don't want what you have. I just want you to be good with it, and then I'll figure out how to have it myself. And that's why we were taught not to have that envy thing. Don't covet other people's things. So you can have, that doesn't mean other people can't have. So there's a lot that you can do. The key thing also is who you surround yourself with. There's a VP, his name's Kwame Salter. He used to say, Robert, I can tell anyone's trajectory. Oh, here's what he said. He goes, your friends determine your trajectory.
Yep.
Your friends determine your trajectory. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be surrounded by the most wealthiest people. It's just, who are you surrounding yourself with? Are you surrounding yourself with people who like to stretch and get into trouble? Even if that's not your character, if they're stretching and getting into trouble, that puts you at risk. And that's one last thing as you're trying to build your path to wherever you're going. That's what you don't know. My mom used to say, she goes, look, Rob, because I was a hyper kid. She goes, Rob, you were born a distraction. And you guys can take that however you want. But mom would say, you're born a distraction. Don't add to the distractions. You were born a distraction. Don't add to the distraction. And my brother used to say, when I used to get upset, when he always get the keys to the car, he goes, until you own it, you run around it. Right? So that, so the thing is, until you own it, you run around it a bit, and so you figure out eventually how to own it. And that's how I figured out how to own it. So I hope that helps, but be involved with your campus, know your faculty, give back to your university, time, commitment, whatever. Never lose a network. Never lose a network, but make it authentic, and take an interest in someone else. I feel like I've won, through celebrating other people's celebrations, It's so funny. There's so many people who want somebody to go to their, my mom used to say, everybody wants somebody to go to their birthday party, but nobody wants to go to somebody else's birthday party. And now we didn't do birthday parties, but these are just family sayings. But you'd be amazed when you celebrate other people's celebrations, what you'll eventually be invited to. Maybe you'll be a chocolate Forrest Gump like me. Come on. 3 years ago, I was asked to give a presentation to the Princess of Thailand at a private tea. So my wife and I were in Thailand, and I was speaking at a private tea to the Princess of Thailand. You know what I mean? And I'm the only one she applauded to after I gave my speech. You never know. In 2017, I was invited at a seated location for the inauguration for the last president of the United States, number 45. So I was seated at inauguration. Not this last president, the one before that one. Trump. So you never know when you're just doing the things that you'll be invited to. And that same day, I was at the Women's March. So when you're independent, you can do it whatever you want. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I like that thing you said about your friends, which it goes back a scripture where it says, tell me who you're. I don't know how the right words are, but tell me who you're hanging out with, and I'll tell you who you are.
Exactly. Because there's a thing about that too, Patrick and everybody, and everybody's talking about bullying now. I was never really comfortable laughing at someone who was the blunt of somebody else's joke or got hurt in a practical joke. And the thing is, my mom used to say, and it's also in Proverbs, what you're talking about, but it says that, the people who you're around, if they're playing jokes on other people, if they're laying traps for other people, you may think they're your friend, but eventually they will lay a trap for you. Or they may get caught in their own trap that traps you. So life already has enough challenges of its own. So that's why it's very important for us to be careful who we stand around. And it's very important for us to know when to extricate ourselves from things that go against the views and policies that we believe in, but if somebody digresses from them, you just walk away. And that's the way I've tried to live. Hopefully this is helpful.
But of course, a lot of insight, a lot of good advice for the young folks. Hey, that's Guillermo Anderson, Lluvia con Sol.
Who is that? Tell everybody.
That is my brother City. My brother was a very well-known musician in Honduras and in Central America, and that's his last album. Unfortunately, he passed away 5 years ago. It's gotta be 6 years ago, I believe.
Good man.
Next year. So, but thank you for having his music there. Thank you for being with us today. Does anybody have any more questions? Does anybody have anything to say to Robert? Any comments? Any remarks?
Well, you know what? I just want to say I have faith and hope in all of you, and we need you. Your university needs you. Our country needs you. Today's Veterans Day, but, patriots don't just carry weapons. Patriotism is in each of you. I'm not a politician, not trying to be voting, not trying to get a vote or anything like that. I just care about the destiny of our country, and I am what I call a paranoid optimist. But the ideals of America needs to live on, and the ideals of America live through you.
To each and every one of them. And, just like you said, they are the ones, this young generation, they are the ones who are going to own this place. I mean, in 10 years, 15 years, they are the ones that are going to be up in the major positions, heading corporations, heading hospitals, heading organizations, them, their classmates, the people that they know. That's going to be the generation up and coming, in power by then.
We need democracy to live through you. Otherwise, it dies.
Yeah. So, and it is hard when you're that young to understand that, but that's what happens eventually. It is you and your friends that basically will take over and run the place. Okay? So it is through you, and democracy will only live if it is instilled in every and each one of you, honestly, and without any shenanigans, But I don't know. Anything else, Robert?
You know what? I'll give you guys a poem from Wordsworth, but also you can go, I have a blog at the end of my website, or you can find me on LinkedIn if you want, on things like that. I would say a couple of things. Number one, you own your presence. So you own your presence. So the billboard that you decide to put out there on you, on social media or anything, you own it. And the image that you decide to put out there will determine eventually how much you earn and what kind of peace you will have in life. So be very judicious, even in your humor, of what you decide to put out there. Own it, because it will be forever out there. That's the biggest challenge you all have right now versus when I came up, okay? But own it, and just make sure, whatever, like they say, whatever is done in the dark comes to the light. Just make sure that whatever you're doing for the lifestyle that you hope to live, whatever you're putting out there matches the lifestyle and the peace and joy that you hope to have. And I'm going to give you a poem from Wordsworth, Longfellow. Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not our goal. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. Not enactment, not in sorrow, is our destiny end our way, but to act that each tomorrow finds us further than today. Students of the University of Illinois, Springfield, we need you.
Thank you.
Make us proud. Thank you.
Robert. You make us proud too, Robert. And I hope we can see each other soon. Make sure you come to Springfield next time you traveling around the Midwest. Hopefully, or maybe someday you can come to class in person, and we would be delighted to have you.
You know, if I can ride Arabian Honduras horses in the Pampas in Argentina, to hanging out in India, to also walking in the back areas of the deserts in Tunisia, to being in Kiev, Ukraine, or hanging out on the border of Russia and Finland, in Finland, I think I can make it to Springfield.
I think you could probably. I don't know. Maybe you can't. Never know. You would never know. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We'll talk later. Okay.
Okay. Ciao.
And thank you for your insight. It was great.
Oh,
Great.
das Vidania. Das Vidania.
Like they say by the Kremlin.
Udacie.
Adios.